Ryan, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Great.
Bring my microphone closer. That might help. You seem like you're a little, I don't know, maybe it's my volume. Hold on. I'll check my, yeah, maybe it's just me. Okay. How are you, Rabbi? Good to see you.
Yeah, fine. We have the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, the celebrating the Jewish New Year, the Hebrew New Year, and today we had a fast day, and we just sat down to have a meal like just before 7 o'clock. So that's why I had to do this a bit later.
No
Um,
problem. No problem. Sure, you were looking forward to it.
yeah, it's
The
a bit of a
meal.
drag. But you get the first few hours is fine. It only begins in the morning with sunrise. Only towards the afternoon or midday, depending. I don't drink coffee, so I don't have that problem. People who drink coffee have a problem because the caffeine letdown, I think, becomes a
Yeah,
problem for them.
sure.
But I don't have that problem. So it's just water, it's just dehydration. I think that's usually the problem. All right, should we get started?
Sure thing. We left off with we were getting ready to start chapter 8.
Chapter 8.
If you
Okay.
have the book, it's probably, let's see, it's on page 83. Yes, 82, 83 is the preamble to the chapter. If I could just quickly plug, uh, while you're looking it up, I want to do a plug for United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism in Canada. I get a calendar. I get a calendar from them every year. I love this calendar. It has the Gregorian dates that everybody uses, but it also has all the holidays, all the festivals. It has the Hebrew date along with it. So I don't know if you can see that, how good you can see that, Rabbi, but it will have like Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. It has
Yeah,
everything.
well done. Yeah.
It's a great calendar. I think it's around $40. It's worth it. Um, and it keeps you on track for all the holidays. So and and the proper date as well, the Jewish date. So, but
All right, everyone. Let me wish everyone a. Are we recording already?
yes, sir. We're live. We're recording. So
So, shalom to you all. I'm here in a place called Tekoa, which is just near Bethlehem, the southeast of Jerusalem, in the Holy Land. And here we just celebrated as Jewish communities, and I think other possibly Noahides and other kinds of pe good people celebrated the onset of the new year. The idea is that according to the Torah. Um, the first day of the seventh month in the Hebrew calendar is a holy day, uh, where we treat it like almost like a Shabbat, almost. And in Jewish tradition, they understood this, the sages understood this through, we'll call it extrapolation, that this must be the day when the first human being was created, Adam and Eve together. Because in Deuteronomy it talks about that the land of Israel is different. This is Moses speaking to the new generation, or the generation that is going to enter into the land of Canaan, and they are being warned that the land and encouraged that the land of Canaan that they're going to make their own to become the land of Israel, is not like the land of Egypt, where they live off the Nile, right? They cultivate their fields, they drink from the Nile. The land of Israel has to rely on rainfall, which means we live at the mercy of God, the Creator. And it mentions there a land, the land of Israel, that the eyes of God is there from the beginning to the end of the year. Now, the rains begin in Israel. It rained today for the first time in many places in Israel. Usually it takes a few more weeks, but we're always very happy when it rains here. So this is when the rains begin. So the fact that it connects in Deuteronomy, that God's eyes are upon the land, and it also is in reference with the rains from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, they understand, the beginning of the rainy season in Israel is the beginning of the year and creation. And so we celebrate it as the day that human beings were created, and that's why we talked a lot about that. I mentioned this, I think, last week's broadcast or class, that we remind ourselves that God is waiting for us. It's as if God removes some barriers so that we can get closer to God. Because during the year, we get busy with our, they call it the necessities of living our lives with our families, going to work, and so on, that we sometimes move away from God. And it's not that God has to get closer to us, we have to get closer to God. So it's also a reminder sort of to lead, we're a few days now, 10 days before the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, which is like a reset button. It should be seen as a reset button with God and with other people that we might have wronged. But of course, it depends on us. It's not like magical. It's God's established this day, and again, it's in the Torah. It's written down very clearly. The 10th day of this month is a day of atonement, a fast day, a day of definitely of reflection on what we've done and how we've disappointed, and the good things also. You shouldn't get that too down on yourself. And now it's become a very happy day, a solemn day, but also a happy day, because our parent in heaven, God Almighty, the Creator, the one God, is calling us back. He's saying nobody is too far away. Some people might need to make a bigger effort, but everything can be forgiven if you really have it in your heart and in your mind. Heart is one thing, you feel guilty, but then you have to also make a decision. Okay, I'm going to try at least to not let it happen again. So it becomes a day when I feel, everything can be with God. I can, wipe things away, and I can have a new start, as in a yearly cycle. And what the one thing the sages say is that when you get to Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, by then you should have already made it up with the people that you've hurt, if you've hurt anybody or offended anybody. And I'm sure we all sometimes raise our voice to people that we love that we shouldn't have, or we didn't speak with humility and with respect towards someone that we should have, and many different ways that we can hurt other people, let alone stealing, God forbid, or we were discussing the past few weeks about stealing. But you have to try to make it up to the people. And it's one thing that I've said before. When I've taught this message years ago, for instance, when I was teaching a class that in the Jewish school in Cali, Colombia, in South America. And in the class, there were about a quarter were non-Jewish children, mainly Catholic or from Catholic families, that had decided they want to send their kids to the Jewish school. They chose the Jewish school over all of the schools. And I said it's a novel idea, but very Jewish, that if you come to God after you've hurt people, and let's say you've stolen. Now, if you steal, you've hurt the victim, the people you've taken the property from, but you've also disobeyed God, because God says in the Ten Commandments and a few other places, you shall not steal. So you have to make it up. You have to ask for forgiveness both from God and from the other person. So one of the person says, listen, all I need is God on my side. So you come to you come to the synagogue or services or at home, wherever you decide I'm going to have a little bit of a ceremony, and you ask God for forgiveness for stealing, for disobeying his commandment of not stealing. And I would say to my pupils, I'd say, God can forgive you. And what do you mean God can't? Anytime a monotheist says God can't do something, you say, wait a second, God is all powerful, almighty, and so on. Yeah, but God also laid down rules of justice, rules of logic. So therefore, if God says, I'm not going to forgive you because you've hurt somebody, and so until you make it up with them, I will not forgive you. So then God is limited too. He's limited himself in a matter of speaking. So so the sages were very clear. They're very self-righteous people that say, I'm okay with God. I'm going to make it up to God, whatever way they think or imagine they can do that, but without going back to the people they've hurt. Let's leave out stealing, insulted people, offended people, put people down. And you think you can just go to God in the Day of Atonement and just stay there the whole day, or prayers, or whatever you think you're going to do, and you've never made it up to the people? God says, listen, I'll forgive you if you didn't keep kosher, or you violated the laws of the Sabbath, of the Shabbat, but you want forgiveness for stealing, for offending people, for slandering other people. No, no, no. You've got to go make it up with them and then come back to me. So the Catholic kids said, no, that couldn't be. God forgives everything. And I said, well, you have your beliefs. I'm not trying to convince you, but I'm teaching Judaism here, and that's what we believe in. So it is an interesting period now. The prayers, the daily prayers in the mornings have gotten a bit longer because we add on some things, trying to arouse people's hearts to atonement. And that it bounces back between we are worthless in the eyes of God, not in the eyes of God. We are worthless compared to God, and we are humble. We are humble, and we are nothing, compared to God. On the other hand, God created us. They say just a little bit lower than angels, that we can achieve that. So it's reminding us, okay, don't get too pleased with yourself, which will lead to pride. Remember that we probably failed to hit the mark that was expected of us. But on the other hand, God is waiting for us. He hasn't lost faith, and he's waiting for us. All right, so let's start the new chapter. Let me try to get it on the screen. This chapter talks about one of the 7 Noahide prohibitions, and the way it was described in Jewish tradition. It's the prohibition of eating a live or a limb from a live animal. I guess some people wouldn't wait for the animal to die. They wanted fresh meat. It might be hunters. And the main principle is we're not allowed to torture or abuse animals. We all know, of course, that God created this earth with everything in it. Now, human beings are the principle or the chief aim or goal or purpose of this world. And we believe that God created the animals to, first of all, to make the world a beautiful place. But also God created the animals to make our lives better. But everything is conditioned. In other words, God didn't do it that we can just do anything we want to animals and, let's say, sport with them. If you're going to go fishing for food, that's okay. If you're going fishing, then to maybe mount it up on your wall, you caught the biggest, largest trout or whatever it would be, that's wrong. Same thing with hunting animals. If you're going to shoot a deer and eat it, okay, that's okay. But if you're doing it just to, again, for the sport, that's wrong. And of course, one of the worst things would be dog fighting, or I think cockfighting, or bullfighting, because that's just sport and torturing the animals, and that would definitely be forbidden. So we have to remember that everything in this world was created by the Creator for us to use, but to use with compassion and not to abuse it. And that goes also for anything in nature. God doesn't want us abusing the beautiful world that God created. But let me try to get it on screen now. This class will probably be a shorter class, first because we started later. And either way, anyway, I think that I'd just like to try it, whether more people would appreciate a shorter class that they can listen to, because I think listening to a class that goes on for an hour, many people will sort of drop out. They don't have the time to commit to it or dedicate their time to it. So maybe we should try doing half an hour or so and see how it goes. See what the viewers say, what the comments are. All right, so hopefully you can see it on screen. Chapter 8, Animals. This is the prohibition of eating a limb from a living animal. It is mentioned in the Torah. It's a strange thing to us because we, at least where I come from, we generally buy our meat either from the supermarket or from the meat from the butcher shop. If any of you are hunters out there, well, maybe this is more something you can relate to. All right, so in the Torah, in Genesis, this is part of the covenant with Noah, and that's where the term comes from, Noahides or Bnei Noach. So this is after the flood. Noah has come out of the ark. So I'm reading from the text Rabbi Cherki has included here in the beginning of this chapter. And as for me, God saying, I will establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, which means all of mankind, and with every living soul that is with you, male, female, but all of the bird, of cattle, and of every living animal upon the earth with you. And then it goes on saying that you should not eat it, we have to care for these animals. Every morning, every moving thing that lives shall be, for this is before, if you see, this is Genesis 3. This is before the sin in the Garden of Eden. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. Every moving thing. As with the green herbs that I've given you all of these. Have I given you all of these? Now, the question is, what does that mean? What every living thing? Did Noah already start eating meat? It's not clear whether this is talking about maybe fish or lower classes of mammals, but either way, God says you're allowed to eat them. As with everything that grows from the ground, you're allowed to eat it. However, there's a warning here. You shall not eat flesh whose blood is still in its soul, which isn't very clear what that means if you just read the text. But the sages understood that, and this is a tradition that we assume it was explained to Moses on the mountain, that when God commands all human beings, this is before there was the Jewish people, you shall not eat flesh whose blood is still in its soul. So while it's still, if you've ever seen a mammal being slaughtered, first of all, it takes some time, depending how it was killed, some time till it actually dies, so the heart stops pumping. And the question is, there's a lot of blood that is still in the carcass and possibly absorbed in the meat. The sages understood this, that you can't eat it while it's still alive. You have to wait for it to definitely be dead. And I can also tell you that Jews don't eat meat, red meat, before it's been either broiled or salted. To the broiling or the salting absorbs, sponges up, if you want, some of the blood that spurted out when the animal was killed. So that's why a kosher piece of meat, Jews that keep kosher, obviously observant Jews that try to adhere to the laws of the Torah, we look for kosher meat, and it's not always readily available unless there's a Jewish community nearby, and then they will assure themselves of a supply of kosher meat. So what does it mean? First of all, it has to be of a kosher animal, like a cow, calf, sheep, goat, um, deer, moose, anything like, which are forms of deer. All those, because, and you'll look in Leviticus, I think chapter, well, I forget which chapter. Anybody that's been following me knows I could find it very quickly, but where it talks about the mammals that we're allowed to eat have to chew their cud and have split hooves. The animals that I mentioned before all have it. The one I didn't mention is a giraffe. Giraffes also chew their cud, have split hooves, but we generally don't eat them because who wants to eat a giraffe? We didn't live in the areas of Africa, and there was I met some people that claimed they've had giraffe meat. I don't know if it was kosher or not, but either way, after the animal has been slaughtered in a particular way to try to minimize the suffering of the animal, then the meat still has to be, certain parts of the meat have to be removed, or the carcass have to be removed. And then generally the pieces of meat have to be, not the whole animal at once, but quartered or whatever it is. And then it's all washed, generally soaked. And then the more common way is then salted with coarse salt, or I think it's actually called in the United States also koshering salt, the big grains type or granules, because you cover the meat with that, it absorbs the blood, or at least, and the blood, usually the blood will drop down under the piece of meat. So the meat is usually suspended on something or put on a tray where there are holes, and then the meat is washed. So whether it makes the meat saltier than non-kosher meat, I don't know. I haven't had the alternative. The other way is just broiling it. So for instance, I learned the kosher way of slaughtering an animal has to be done in a particular way. So there were some instances where I was invited to a barbecue in someone's country home, and they had chickens, live chickens. And they said to me, do I want to slaughter some of the chickens so they can put them on the spit and we can roast them there? Strange thing to do. Most Jews, most rabbis don't know how to slaughter in the kosher way. They know maybe they've learned the laws, but they've never really done it. It's not a pleasant experience. I'm not proud of it. It makes it more difficult for me to eat the meat because I just met the chicken, I just met the cow, whatever. But I wanted more for the experience to know how it was done. And so that's the way to get kosher meat. And the sages understood that's also part of this. But again, Noahides don't have to actually have kosher meat. they should try to get meat where the suffering to the animal was minimized. And I have received some questions in the past from people, from good folks like yourselves, about the industrial meat industry, or I guess that's repetition, is not very kind to the animals. The meat packers or the meat producers, all they want to know is how economically they can kill the animal and put it in the freezer in your supermarket or get it onto your plate. They don't care if the chickens are packed into these cages or the cow has been on a. There are other ways, but there. So that is a question, but it doesn't make it forbidden. But we should try. The animal is dead, but we should all try to find ways to minimize the suffering of animals, assuming we are going to go on eating meat. I'm going to try to go back to the sharing. Okay, that was the third source. This is from the prophet Hosea. On that day, we assume when the Messiah comes, I will make a covenant with the beasts of the field and the birds of the air and the creeping things on the ground. I will also banish weapons of war, bow, sword, war from the land. Thus I will let them lie down safely. So there is an idea in Jewish tradition that when the Messiah comes, we're all going to become vegetarians. Now, that might put off people. I don't want them. Then, hold them off for a little bit, God, Hashem. Let me get my fill of meat. Like I said, it's an idea that's out there. Nobody is really sure. Just there was a famous rabbi who lived 2 generations ago, Rabbi Kook, who was a philosopher too, and his feeling was that we were allowed to eat meat, but that wasn't the preferred form to exist or to sustain, to consume sustenance. It couldn't make sense that we have to kill live animals to sustain ourselves. There are alternatives that makes it more complicated. And with most of you guys, I'm in for a good steak or a good burger, nice juicy one. But I can also understand, especially because I experienced slaughter of animals, and it's not pretty. It's not a pretty thing. And I believe that Hashem put that cow there for us to eat and to give us milk and maybe its leather and so on. But it was a live creature. And if I was forced to give it up, I would give it up. But like I said, it's just a tradition that you might hear about. And
Wouldn't it
that's
also wouldn't it also be considered part of the test of life, Rabbi? I mean, Hashem could have easily made us in a manner where we didn't need sustenance to live. But as part of this human experience, we need sustenance of some sort, and how we treat that aspect of our life, how we treat this animal, this fruit, the trees, everything, also another layer to the test.
Yeah, yeah. We believe that God created a world where there are, see it as an obstacle course, that there are things that God expects us. He gives us rules, and sometimes we're just supposed to use our own reason and logic or moral inclination to overcome those obstacles, or to not fall in stumble into the pitfalls, because we're supposed to improve on ourselves. We weren't created perfect. We were created in the image of God, but with the necessity that we have to use our brains, our hearts, and our beliefs in order to raise ourselves up from the animal world. Some people, I think, drop lower than the animal world, but most of us, I think, we raise our families, we love people, we help people for altruistic reasons, and we dream, which animals don't do. But you're right; we don't know exactly why God, in His wisdom, decided to do it this way, but it's there. And we're allowed to eat meat. I've met vegetarians, and I have 2 sisters that are vegetarians. We used to argue about it or debate it, but now we live with it. We make arrangements when we're sharing a meal together or visiting each other's homes that we can all find something to eat. All right, let's go into the first law. Maybe we'll do 1 or 2. The Torah permitted the humans to feed themselves with every type of plant life, as it is stated. God said, "Behold, I've given you every seed-bearing plant that is upon the surface of the entire earth, and every tree which has seed-bearing fruit, it shall be yours for food. Realize again, this is Genesis 1. So that's already Garden of Eden. And before the sin, the early stage of human existence. And humans were also permitted to eat many types of animals, as it is stated. This is later on after the flood. And the fear and the dread of human beings shall be upon every animal of the earth, and upon every bird of the sky, of all that moves upon the ground, and of all fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. God saying, yeah, you can use them for your field, for agriculture, to ride on, for birds, to carry your burdens, and to eat. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. As with the green herbs have I given you all of these. And again, this is after the flood. So number 2, the Torah prohibited, though, we saw this before, eating a limb from a living animal. Or in other words, Rabbi Cherki is interpreting this, any part of an animal that was taken from it while it was still alive. As it states, however, you shall not eat flesh whose blood is still in its soul. I think last cycle, Frank, you asked me a question. There's a certain dish. Is it what is?
Well, in the U.S., we have mountain oysters, which are the testicles off of young bulls. They also serve in many restaurants the testicles of young sheep.
So according to this would be forbidden. So I hope you guys don't like it too much. This prohibition applies even after the animal whose flesh was detached while it was still alive has died. Now, you castrate the animal, and then it dies a few hours later, whatever it is, even though the animal's already died, but you cut it off when the animal was still alive. So then it would make it forbidden. Now, why should it be forbidden? Again, the Torah doesn't really explain it. It leaves it up to us to try to fathom it out, interpret it. It would seem that it could painful, unnecessary pain for the animals. Actually in 3, and we'll stop maybe here. Among the reasons why eating flesh from a living animal is forbidden is to distance humanity from brutality. Again, that would seem to be the reason, a logical reason. Why aren't we allowed to cut meat or parts of the animal off while it's still alive? It would seem that it's to make us human beings into more humane, if you want that, merciful, compassionate animals or creatures. So to distance humanity from brutality, pursuit of lustful pleasures, and you can't even wait till the animal's dead and you're already tearing it apart, and impulsivity. So of course the Torah is supposed to help human beings, amongst other things, become godly. And godliness is to have compassion and feelings for all living creatures, possibly not even just for living creatures. So some of these, if you want ritualistic ones like eating kosher and so on, generally we interpret them that they stem from this root. Though, as with many and quite frequently, the ritualistic commandments in the Torah for Noahides and for Jews are not. It's not that we don't get the reason. The reason is not explicitly stated there, and it's left up to it's the king's command. We obey, we respect the king, admire the king, fear the king, love the king, and not only that, we trust the king. That's what emunah is, the word for Jewish faith or faith in Hebrew. Emunah. Sometimes it's translated just as belief, but Rabbi Sachs emphasizes quite frequently, the former chief rabbi of England, that it more leans toward the meaning of the word emunah leans more towards trust. So that the word faith would be more practical, because faith, I have faith in them, in somebody that I believe is a true, honest, righteous person. I can rely on them. I have faith in them. Ani ma'amin bo, but and definitely with God, we have faith in God. God has faith in us, and we have faith in God based on what we intuit, based on the Torah, based on the beautiful things that are in nature and in this world, that we assume what God didn't have to create a beautiful world for us, but God did. It's more us that we're commanded not to ruin this world. And I think the idea of not harming animals unnecessarily also comes into that. All right, we'll finish here this week. Frank, do you have anything else to add?
No, sir. Nope, you pretty much covered it.
Okay, next week is Yom Kippur, and the fast it finishes probably about 5 to 7. Well, today it was 5 to 7, so it's possible again we can start maybe 7:30 next week.
Okay.
Thursday, which means 12:30, sorry, 7:30 Israel time. That means 12:30 your time.
Okay.
All right, so God bless you all. Think about it. It's a good time now to think about how you can improve yourselves as people to become more godly. And you don't do it all at once, but to start at least the first steps. And again, the sages who used to involve themselves in these things, they said, listen, nobody can do it all at once, but you have to take the first few steps and then try to keep going in that direction. So God bless you all. And I hope we all have a happier year, prosperous year, a healthy year. May the war in Gaza be finished. May we have peace here in Israel and in Ukraine and anywhere else in the world that needs that. God bless you all. Have a Shana Tova, a good year, blessed with everything that I mentioned before.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for your time. If you're out there, if you're able, you can afford to, or you're physically able to give part of yourself some time to help someone or a donation in the next week, it'd be great. So
Excellent idea. God bless you all.
thank you, Rabbi. Thanks
Thank
everyone for joining. Shalom.